The following video is on derivative shortcuts, and this is part 2 in this video series. In this video we're going to learn how to take the derivative of trig functions as well as e to the x and the natural log function. Let's start with trig functions, and we'll start with the graph of sine x. So we can create a chart, and notice that when x is 0, if we look at the slope of the tangent line to sine x, we have a positive slope, and it's about as steep as it's going to get. So it'll be a big positive number. So I'm going to put down when x is 0 that the derivative is a big positive number. Now looking at pi over 2, we see that we have a horizontal tangent line. So any horizontal tangent line must have a slope of 0. So at pi over 2, the derivative is going to be 0. At pi, we see that we have a negative slope, and this slope seems to be about as negative as the graph is ever going to get. So once again, we're going to have, for the derivative, a very negative number. And at 3 pi over 2, again, we see a horizontal tangent line. So again, our slope is 0. So if we plot all of these points, big positive number at 0, the y value is going to be 0 at pi over 2. The y value is going to be a big negative number at pi. And the y value is going to be 0 at 3 pi over 2. We end up with the graph of cosine x. Thus we see that the derivative of sine x is cosine x. We can do the same thing for the graph of cosine x. So if we look at x equals 0, cosine has a horizontal tangent line, so its slope is 0. At pi over 2, the slope of the tangent line is a very big negative number. At pi, the slope is again 0. And at 3 pi over 2, we have a big positive number. So again, putting these all together and connecting the dots, we don't quite get the graph of sine, we actually get the graph of negative sine. So d by dx of cosine x is actually negative sine x. Now for our second rule, if f of x equals e to the x, then f prime of x is also e to the x. This is one of the easiest derivative formulas to memorize because nothing changes. The derivative of e to the x is e to the x. And our final new derivative rule, if f of x equals ln of x, then f prime of x equals 1 over x. And we'll see the proofs for both of these once we get to the chain rule, which happens in a few weeks in class. So let's look at an example, putting these all together. Let's look at f of x equals 7 e to the x plus 25 sine x minus 3x squared. Taking this piece by piece, the derivative of 7 times e to the x is going to be 7 times e to the x. We're using the constant multiple rule, so the number 7 stays the same, and the derivative of e to the x is just e to the x. Moving on to the second term, we have the derivative of 25 sine x is going to be 25 cosine x, because the 25 is a constant, so it stays the same, times the derivative of sine, which we now know is cosine x. Then we have minus 3x squared, whose derivative is going to be 3 times the derivative of x squared, which is 2x. So simplifying this, we end up with 7 times e to the x plus 25 cosine x minus 6x. Let's do another example. If f of x equals 4x to the negative 3 plus cosine x plus 10, taking this term by term, we'll get negative 12x to the negative 4. So I bring the exponent out front, leaving the 4 alone. Subtract 1 from the exponent, which will give me a negative 4 in the exponent. The derivative of cosine x is, remember, negative sine x. And the derivative of 10 is just 0 because 10 is a constant.